toxic. They also recalled abusive emails, dressing downs at company meetings, exceedingly long hours, and unexpected terminations. Many were asked to sign non-disclosure agreements before an interview, which to me, signing a non-disclosure agreement is not a big deal given the type of business that they're in. But even before an interview, I'm no expert with, these type of businesses, but I thought that was a little odd. And I also realized that disgruntled employees aren't typically the best source of information. However, you'll see in a little while that there were many employees that left, and these were folks that were pretty high up and had good prestigious positions at other companies and would move on to have probably well-paying positions with other companies. If the non-disclosure agreement allowed that. There were a dozen highly placed executives that had quit between 2012 and 2016. They included the heads of finance, technology, manufacturing, and science. From 2015 to 2016, respected leaders of Moderna's cancer and rare disease programs both resigned. Lower ranking employees expressed disappointment and confusion by Moderna's switch to less ambitious treatments. They feel that Moderna had pushed off projects meant to upend the drug industry to focus first on far less lucrative field of vaccines. So vaccines, when you look at moneymakers, vaccines, from what I gathered through my reading and research, are not top of the chain. Things like IVIGs, cancer treatments, those are big money makers. Vaccines usually are not, unless, I'm going to plant a little seed here, unless they're multi-dose. If it's a multi-dose vaccine, then you could probably make some money, or the company could probably make them some money. And at the time that they decided to go into the field of vaccines, they were years behind their competitors in that field. One thing I read in the Unlimited Hangout article was that outside venture capitalists said that Moderna has so many investors clamoring to get in that it can't afford to turn away any that get too nosy. Well, let me reread that because I think I typed my note wrong. Okay, so Unlimited Hangout, the article that I read, it said that outside venture capitalists said that Moderna has so many investors clamoring to get in that it can afford to turn away any that get too nosy. So why would that be? Why would they be concerned about their investors wanting to get information about what they're dumping money in? Now, I play the stock market. I dumped $20 into something. I think the most I own of one particular stock is $120. We're not talking $120. We're not even talking 500. We're talking millions. We're talking hundreds of thousands and millions. So I think if someone is investing that kind of money into your company, they may have some questions, especially if you're not producing. And then, two, you want to keep in mind that this was before the whole COVID mRNA vaccine train got to rolling. So Moderna, they are pretty savvy at getting investors. In fact, smaller players have been given a peek at Moderna's data before committing millions to the company. A former Moderna scientist is quoted as saying, quote, "They're running an investment firm and then hopefully it also develops a drug that's successful," unquote, unquote. So, and it does seem, as I give you the information that I found, it does seem that they're all about the money, and they were promising these investors these treatments. They were getting these people to pump this money, and nothing was coming to fruition. So in 2016, Moderna moved its first two potential vaccines into human trials. At the time of the Stat News article, executives wouldn't say which diseases the vaccines targeted, and Moderna did not have to list them on the clinicaltrials.gov website. In case you don't know, there is a website. It's www.clinicaltrials.gov. You can look up, you can put stuff in the search engine and pull up any previous trials, ongoing trials, trials that they're recruiting for. If they're completed, you can look at some of the information. They don't put a whole lot in there, but you can look at some of the information. And it's pretty informative. It is very interesting. If you have some time and you're interested, I would suggest you go on there and look around. But one thing about Bancel, he had no experience running a drug development operation when he was picked to head Moderna. Most of his career was in sales and operations, not science. He went into sales and promoted through the ranks at Eli Lilly, which is one of the big pharma giants leading their Belgian operation, as I already mentioned. In 2007, at age 34, he achieved his goal, stepping in as CEO of BioMarin. And, quote, it was this rise that caught the eye of investment firm Flagship Ventures. Its CEO, Noubar Afeyan, I'm going to spell that. Noubar, Noubar, last name Afeyan, Afeyan, tried to get Bancel to take over one of the firm's many startups, but he rejected them all. Moderna was different. The company's core idea was simple: cut out the middleman in biotech, which to a salesman is a good pitch. Moderna's technology promised to subvert the whole field, creating therapeutic proteins inside the body instead of in manufacturing plants. The idea was to harness messenger RNA, or as we now call it, mRNA. Bancel liked the idea. He knew it was a gamble, but told Stat News, quote, "If I don't do it and it works, I'm going to kick myself every morning," unquote. Now, despite he never having worked with mRNA before, Bancel has said he sat around the table with his core team in the early days of the company, dreaming up experiments. As a result, he is listed as co-inventor on more than 100 Moderna's early patent applications, which this is pretty unusual for a CEO who's not a PhD scientist. So we're going to flash forward to 2020 to their vaccine generated an immune response in phase 1 trial subjects. The company's stock surged, hitting $29 billion. And that's astonishing for a company that at the time said zero products. They had zero products approved by the FDA. $29 billion. How did he do that? How did they do that? Several vaccines experts asked by Stat concluded that based on the information available by Moderna, there was no way to know how impressive or non-impressive the vaccine may be. Moderna blitzed the media. They went on CNN, MSNBC, basically all the alphabet soup mainstream media. They didn't give many details on their data, but spoke lots and lots of words. So they had a job to do. They had to get out there and promote this new vaccine and get the attention that they needed to, because, you have these investors dumping in this money and they're going to expect a return. So when they're dumping in $29 million, you are going to have to produce millions, if billions. So they Bancel was a salesman, and this was what he did. He went out and sold. The figures that the company released didn't mean much on their own. Critical information was withheld, and without it, the info couldn't be interpreted. So they just put out enough. It was just enough hook to pique interest and get money, but no bread and butter, just a hook. So then we look at December 18th, 2020, the FDA issued its EUA to Moderna as a 2-dose vaccine for individuals 18 and over, which is what they wanted. They wanted multi-dose vaccines. And we'll talk about that because they at one point got very close to getting a treatment for a rare disorder out on the market. And because it was a test run, but their thought was multi-dose vaccines. The FDA eventually placed a warning label, as you know, on Moderna's vaccine regarding a likely association with reported cases of heart inflammation in young adults called myocarditis, or in the outer lining of the heart called pericarditis. And as you know, if you'd have to be living under a rock not to know of all the different people that play in sports that are collapsing on fields, all the different young men. I'm from Washington, PA, and last year there was on the news a young man, myocarditis. You know, they do downplay it. They say that the myocarditis is mild. But myocarditis is not mild, and we'll talk about that later. But it's clear that Moderna, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, they all benefited by the shifts in vaccine development and policy changes brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. The change in the policy favored speed and implementation of new experimental technology at the expense of safety and thorough study. And I know, all of the mainstream media, all of the talking heads for the media, for the government, they all entertainers, the late night comedians, they all say this is safe, this is safe, this is safe. But let's keep in mind, and we talked about this in the first episode, you're talking about years of research and trials and studies on prior vaccines. These vaccines were made in under a year with new technology. Yes, they were working, these companies were working on the technology, but nothing had come to fruition. And for a brand new vaccine to be distributed to our population under an EUA for a pandemic that was declared an emergency, it is unprecedented. This was the first. So let me get down off my soapbox and get back to the topic at hand. But they all of the companies, not just Moderna, they all benefited. And arguably the biggest benefactor of these changes are the developer of the vaccines themselves. And out of those, Moderna benefited the most. The COVID-19 crisis did get rid of roadblocks and hurdles that had prevented Moderna from getting any single product to the market in the past. It turned the money-making aspect way around for them. From 2016 through the beginning of the pandemic, Moderna could barely hold it together. It was losing top executives, top talent, major investors at a pretty scary rate. So, I mean, they were I'm pretty sure, I don't know Stefan Bancel, and again, if I'm saying his name wrong, I apologize. But given the position that he's in, all eyes of the world are looking at you. He probably had some sleepless night. He was probably sweating a little bit. Moderna's promises, they just kept making promises of new treatments, but